In this tutorial, we're gonna talk about arrays in Kotlin. We use arrays to store multiple values in a single place instead of declaring separate variables for each value. For example, to store a list of numbers, a list of users, or a list of products, we use arrays. In Kotlin, to create an array, we must create an instance of the array object. There are several ways to do this, but a convenient way is using the array_of function. So I write val numbers equals array_of. Between parentheses we must add our array's items. So for the first item I add 1, for the second item I add 2, and for the third item I add 3. Notice that we must separate each item using a command like this. Now let's print our array to see its content. So I write println and pass it our numbers. But we get this weird string. Here's the reason. When we print an array, Kotlin returns the array's address in the memory. So if you have another array and print that, you're gonna get something different, because each object is gonna be in a different memory space. But how can we see the content of an array? Arrays in Kotlin have a function named content_to_string, which returns a string representing the content of the array. So let's use it and run the project to see the result. As you see, this time it prints 1, 2, and 3, which is the content of our array. To get a specific item from an array, arrays have a function named get that takes the index of the item we want to get and returns that item. So here I write numbers.get and pass it the index of the item I want to get. One thing you have to know is that in arrays the index of the items start from 0. For example, the index of the 1 is 0, the index of the 2 is 1, and the index of the 3 is 2. So this line returns the first item, which is 1. Let's keep it in a variable and print it. So I write val first number equals numbers.get and pass it to the print function. As you see, it prints 1, which is equal to the first item in our array. But using the get function is not very common in Kotlin. So I remove the get function and add square brackets and pass it the index of the item I want to get. If we run the project, we'll get the same result. But what will happen if we use an invalid index? Let's remove the 0 and write 9 and run the project. Here, because our array has 3 items and the maximum index is 2, when we try to get an item with index 9, we get an exception. Exceptions report errors in Kotlin and we'll talk about them later. But for now, just know that by passing an invalid index, our app will crash. Now let's revert it to 0 and change the value of the first item to 100. One way to do this is using the set function. So I write numbers.set. As you see, it takes 2 parameters. The first one is the index of the item we want to change its value, and the second one is the new value. So for the first parameter I pass 0 and for the second parameter I pass 100. If we run the project, we see instead of 1 we get 100. But like the get function, using the set function is not common in Kotlin. So I remove the set and add square brackets and write 0 and assign 100 to it. If we run the project, we'll get the same result. To get the size of an array, we can use its size property. So I remove these lines and create a variable named size and write numbers.size and print this size variable. But instead of declaring a new variable and keeping our array size in it, we can pass the numbers.size directly to the print function. So we can remove this variable. Now if we run the project, because our array has 3 items, it must print 3 in the console. So let's run it and see the result. Very good, it prints 3 in the console. Also, arrays have a function named isEmpty that checks if that array is empty or not. If it is empty, it returns true, otherwise it returns false. So let's remove the size property and write is empty and run the project to see the result. As you see, because our array isn't empty, it returns false. This is all for this topic, and in the next lesson I'll talk about operators in the Kotlin. Please hit the subscribe and bell button so you'll be notified for every new video release. Also, please don't forget to like this video or send me your comments if you need further help.